This is the Bryan McClain Show on today's News Talk Radio, TNT.
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. You're listening to today's News Talk. I hope everybody's enjoying the show today. We're going to be joined in this hour by David Giammona once again over here on the show. Looking forward to speaking with him again. Let's see here. Body found in Nevada County Lake, believed to be missing Truckee teen. Sheriff's Office says. Truckee, California. In a press conference on Monday, officers provided an update on the search for 16-year-old Kylie Rodney, who has been missing since early August. Private dive team said on Sunday they found the teen in a Nevada County lake. Sheriff Shannon Moon said the body has not been identified, but it is believed to be Rodney. Volunteer divers with a private search group on YouTube called Adventurers with Purpose announced Sunday that they found the teen inside her car under about 14 feet of water in the Prosser Reservoir, not far from the campground. Now, that she was partying at this campground. There was a party night there. Teens were partying out at the campground. I'm actually from that area. I'm familiar with the lakes up there and the teen parties up there. Been to a couple myself. We've recovered the vehicle. We've recovered the vehicle last night. We have located a deceased inside the vehicle. We believe it's our missing person. We have not been able to positively identify, but it's more than likely where we are today, Sheriff Moon said. I find this story very interesting because the police have been out there looking for this girl for, over a couple of weeks now and found nothing. And she was found by YouTubers. Wow. Am I alone in finding that endlessly intriguing? How is it that the resources of both Placer and Nevada County Sheriff's Department could not find this girl who was in a car upside down in 14 feet of water right off the side of the lake that where all the teens were partying, where she was last seen? What is the deal with that? What's going on with the Sheriff's Department over there? My goodness, do they not have the illustrious salaries and advanced equipment that YouTubers have? I don't know. Seems like something to be noted there between the lines with regards to this poor missing girl. She obviously did not need to be missing this long. These guys found her within, I think, less than 48 hours of getting their equipment out there. Two guys with boats and dive equipment and a buoy with a magnet on it located the car almost, I don't want to say immediately, but very, very quickly after a long and ostensibly exhaustive search by Placer and Nevada County Sheriff's Department. What does that even mean? What does that say? I don't know. I'll leave it up to you folks. I'd love to hear from you. I'm at Hesher Media on both Instagram and Twitter. Those are probably your two best ways to get a hold of me, aside from email. I have a new email here at TNT I still have to configure. I will get on that, so you can email me at TNT also. You can also find me at alternatecurrentradio.com. All my contact information is up over there. Did you know there are many ways you can listen to TNT Radio? Why not stream us direct from our website on your desktop, tablet, or mobile device, or download our app from the App Store? We even stream live on YouTube, Rumble, and Odyssey. We got you covered on TNT Radio.
Digging deeper into the news.
It's the topics that matter to me.
Today's News Talk Radio, TNT.
Our next guest is a U.S. Army retired chaplain colonel. He's an end-time expert, scholar, author, writer, and speaker. He retired from the Army in 2018 after 32 years of military service. And his Army assignments included 4 years in the Pentagon as the personal assignments officer for the Chief of Chaplains, 3 tours of combat duty in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Saudi Arabia, and extensive travel throughout the world as a trainer, mentor, and coach to the military. He's got a new book. It's called The Military Guide to Disarming Deception, Battlefield Tactics to Expose the Enemy's Lies and Triumph in Truth. I would like to welcome back to the show Colonel David Giammona. Colonel, how are you? And welcome to the show. It's great to have you back.
Brian, it's great to be back with you and looking forward to a great show today and many interesting and deep conversations about our world.
Oh, me too. Me too, Colonel. I'm so glad you're back on the show. I appreciate you taking the time to join us once again. So, I don't know where to start. So much has happened since I had you on last time. I guess maybe we should talk about Mar-a-Lago, about President Trump, about the FBI, the DOJ. What's your take on all this now that it's been stewing with the population here for a couple weeks?
Well, it's an interesting scenario. They are unrelenting in trying to get Trump not to run again. And so they're trying to criminally prosecute him so he can't run. And they know that. He knows that. In fact, he just launched today a lawsuit against the FBI, against the White House for this happening. But there are a lot of things to talk about, and which we actually talk about in our book quite often too, is the deep state. People don't realize, even when Trump was in office and even Joe Biden now in office, there's a lot of people that remain hidden from public view. They're working there continuously. The civilians, they're really the deep state, whether they're in, the Biden administration or they're in the UN or other various sundry entities in the U.S. They're there, and they don't want Trump to run, not because a lot of people think, well, they don't like him, or he's a loudmouth, or what, and those things are true. Sometimes Donald's his own worst enemy, but the fact of the matter, they don't want to run because he's not a globalist. He wants to make America great again, which means the rest of the world. He's not joining China, Russia, and others and have a global entity. That's the main reason why they're after him. All these other things are superfluous. But the other thing, Brad, I would say is when people ask me about this, if he has secret documents, should he be prosecuted? I said, I'll answer that question if you'll answer me whatever happened to the Russian hoax, the Ukrainian phone call, all the witch hunts that they're after him with, that they're pretending to be solemn about, but in fact they're rejoicing in the fact they're trying to get this guy and take him down. So lots of talk about that, but that's my opening salvo anyway.
Oh yeah, and I've been on a bit of a bender here against three-letter agencies. Nothing against any of the good people that work in them, but when it comes right down to it, we see, and this doesn't even have to be a partisan thing. I think that's the thing I'm really trying to drive home to my new audience out there, my people that have been with me for years. They know where I stand on all this, but we've got a track record happening here with these agencies that we can go so far back and just see, wait a minute, all we got was redacted information or nothing on this giant list of highly publicized and politicized events going all the way back to J. Edgar Hoover's time. And I had a guest on last week who was talking about the history of J. Edgar Hoover. Joe Olson was with me last week, and he was really cutting into, where this all came from, how it all came about. And then I've had other guests like Odd Man Out on, where we've been talking about different plots where we've seen the FBI entrapping people and creating narratives of terrorism that would not have come to any sort of fruition had they not been there providing, hundreds of thousands of dollars and motivation and equipment to people who were schizophrenics or mentally challenged. I mean, there's just so much terrible stuff that's gone on. And now, like you said, just ask one of those people, well, wait a minute. If something illegal happened, that's fine. But can we take a step back and look at some of the stuff that's recently happened here? Because we were told there was this Russia collision thing. And now we know that was, a lot of people knew right away because they could read the tea leaves. But now we all know, if we've been paying attention, that they had no evidence of that there was illegality committed by Peter Stork and all kinds of other people. And, it's like, wait, hold on a second. You guys can't just go on another witch hunt here and expect everybody to just be like, oh, yeah, okay, that's a great idea. Let's see if Donald Trump stole the nuclear football or something ridiculous like this.
Yeah, one of the great culprits is Adam Schiff. He said on CNN numerous times he had unmitigated evidence that Donald Trump was a Russian agent. Well, Adam, where is that evidence now? That's a lie. It's a deception. We know that. And then he's been on a lot of news shows lately because they're trying to put the pressure on the DOJ to investigate Trump, which they did. But Adam Schiff, let me just say this, a liar. I wouldn't trust him as far as I can throw him. I'd say that to his face. He was here today. And he is one of the culprits. He's one of the guys that the deep state just is manipulating to do their bidding and do their will. Now, the other part of all this, when I was in the Army, if I'd done nearly a half of the stuff or a tenth of the stuff that Hillary Clinton did on those emails, I would be serving time in the penitentiary at Leavenworth. And she knew exactly what she was doing. They scrubbed and bleached her files. All of that should have been brought up. She should be in jail right now. She's not. And many of these other people, Nancy Pelosi, same thing. A lot of stuff going on the left, because the left owns many of the corporate media that we hear today. They are in sync with them. And if you don't believe it, every time Nancy Pelosi says something, just watch the news cycle. It's all repeated verbatim of what she says. It may be a little different now, but that's what's been going on in the past years. And to your point about J. Edgar Hoover, J. Edgar Hoover had the goods on all these presidents. He had information. They couldn't touch him, and he knew that. And that's what made the FBI very dangerous, and still is dangerous today. They really need to clean that house. They need to shut it down, really, and restart it, because they have a corporate integral mess with these three-lettered agencies, CIA included. A lot of deep state going on. We need to just take it apart moment by moment, bit by bit, and see what's really going on in there. And that's going to be difficult to do, but it is possible.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to do, because we, like you said, we've got a long history of potential blackmail going on here. When you really look into under the hood of what's been going on, especially in particular with the FBI. And when they indicted Jeffrey Epstein, there's video footage. I remember watching live video footage of them raiding the island estate and coming out with everything. So these people have all of Epstein's files, and they essentially just closed the book on it by sending Ghislaine Maxwell off to Club Fed, where she can do yoga and eat vegan snacks for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Literally the only person who's been stitched up for trafficking to no one, to redacted, person is like, and the FBI is sitting on all that information. So it's like, how can anyone be sitting on that information? How is it safe for a country or even a planet at this point, considering the powers that we're talking about associated with that guy? How is it safe for someone to be hoarding his blackmail files?
Well, it isn't, and we're headed the direction of what's been happening the last several hundred years. Starting with the Illuminati and all these other quote conspiracy organizations, which are not conspiracy anymore. The New World Economic Forum, the Great Reset, Klaus Schwab, you name it. All these players are putting together a one world organization, one world government, digital currency in China coming up on us. You name it. We could talk for a long time about all these things. But going back to your point with Jeffrey Epstein, look, those guards, quote, were asleep. The camera was turned off. Jeffries is dead. There is a lot of wealthy, rich people, including Bill Clinton, Bill Gates, and you name it, who had their hand in this. That guy we all knew that guy was not going to see the light of day, because he had evidence on every one of those puppets, and now he's dead. And where are we going with all this? The fact of the matter is, it's not conspiracy theories anymore. It's actual payoffs. People are being bought out. The deep state is alive and well, and numerous things are going on right before the public's eye. And a lot of people, if they don't wake up to it, we're going to find ourselves just like Russia and China and everywhere else becoming communistic, socialistic, and everything else, because that's what the deep state is wanting to put together.
There you go. There you go. That's right, my friend. Fourth Industrial Revolution, Great Reset, all this stuff is code for austerity for you and me so that they can switch us into their new paradigm, which guess what? Guess what? You can set your identity politics aside. The new paradigm is one of tyranny and authoritarianism wrapped in all the worst parts of fascism, communism, and everything in between. And we'll pick up on that thought on the other side of a break here with today's News Talk.
TNT Radio's Jeremy Nell and Germ Warfare.
Would you fly on an airplane knowing that there's a chance that the pilot or both pilots could get sick or pass out or even die? I'm pretty certain I would absolutely not fly. The safety record of the airline industry, generally speaking, is quite good from my understanding. It's certainly safer to fly than it is to drive. But when you add a whole new vector to the risk factor of flying, such as myocarditis, pericarditis, and this vector has been induced, has been forced by aviation authorities who are working hand in hand with the state, the government, the pharmaceutical industry. This adds a whole new level of not only complexity, but risk and concern. Because now suddenly, if I have to fly next week, I'm now going to potentially think twice, knowing that vaccine mandates are an issue in the aviation industry.
Jeremy Nell and Germ Warfare on today's News Talk Radio, TNT.
A lot of people may not agree with us right now, but there may come a time when they actually have an issue that affects them, that they don't have the freedom to choose. And if we don't preserve it, we won't have it.
Get to see this for yourself.
We begin this new week with an extraordinary moment in our history. 18 days into this truck convoy, and the federal government invoked a security measure that goes beyond anything seen in this country in the last 50 years.
Banks will be told to freeze the accounts of anyone helping finance the protests. And the owners of vehicles jamming streets will be directly targeted.
Trucking for Freedom, Chapter 1, How We Got Here. Visit truckingforfreedom.com.
The FISA warrants, misleading Congress, misleading the DOJ, misleading Donald Trump, the attack on Michael Flynn, Andrew McCabe fired, the Clinton emails, the Wiener laptop, Roger Stone, the January 6th Capitol riot, Hunter Biden protection, the Gretchen Whitmer plot, Kyle Rittenhouse, the Mar-a-Lago raid, years of irredeemable corruption by the FBI, lighting the fuse for freedom. TNT Radio.
All right, welcome back, everybody. You're listening to the Bryan McClain Show on TNT. I'm joined by Colonel David Giammona. Colonel, welcome back to the show. Before the break, we're having this talk about the deep state. The deep state. You know, it got thrown around so much during the Trump years. I think a lot of people kind of stopped to think about what it actually meant. Is it actually a partisan thing? I think we've figured out that it's not. It's just you basically got a couple of different management styles that sort of buzz around Capitol Hill. But ultimately, these things that we're talking about here that are on the deeper side of it, like the staffers and the billeted, career politicians. And then you've got, of course, that overlay of World Economic Forum, the group of NGOs, to include Open Society. You got the Davos crowd, the CFR, and they all seem to be nudging us toward this new paradigm here. And maybe they want us on universal basic income and central banking, digital currency, so they can control us easier, tell us what we can and can't buy. We don't need to own anything if their little free money controls everything that, we basically rent.
Yeah. So in Book of Revelation, chapter 13, a lot of people who in my league refer to this chapter because it talks about the rise of the Antichrist, that person that can control the world, and that you cannot buy or sell without a number. Now, back 2,000 years ago when this was written, that was virtually impossible. The world was not digitized, not computerized, but these days, China right now is talking about and implementing a digital currency, doing away with cash in their society. Now, it's going to take some doing because out in the country, how do the peasants and how do you do all these things? But the fact of the matter is, if you don't have a high credit rating score, social credit score in China, they can limit your buying and selling. They can shut you down. They can control your assets, and they know what you're buying and they know what you're selling. The same thing is coming to the rest of the world, United States of America, because they can't let China pass this up with the digital currency. Once that's in place, buying and selling, you're going to have a number. An account number, a number that eventually will be tattooed to you, according to the book of Revelation, on your hand or your forehead. And, a lot of people some years ago thought, oh, that's nonsense. Nothing's going to be like, but now it is actually happening. And that's why you said they're nudging us toward, it's not a secret anymore. It's not a conspiracy theory. They're opening saying, we are doing, the World Economic Forum is saying, hey, we're doing this for the good of humanity so we don't kill each other in the future. We don't nuke each other. We don't blow each other up. We don't have any more world wars. We have to control the population. This is how they're going to be doing it.
Yeah, they've created government boards with tons and tons of money that have Silicon Valley luminaries on them and bankers on them and other CFR members. And they say that their main purpose is to compete with China in the upcoming Fourth Industrial Revolution, and the things that are most important to them. You'll notice human beings are left out of this completely. Things that are most important to them are competing with China with regards to robotics, biotechnology, and track and trace sort of stuff, and artificial intelligence, and that's it. Nothing about life, liberty, happiness, rights, human rights, anything like that. It's all just technology stuff.
Well, and Joe Biden last year, if we paid attention, there was a great op-ed written, I believe it was by the Wall Street Journal, that said that Joe Biden's talking about we must join and be ahead of the new world order. Well, that comes directly out of the Illuminati, as you mentioned, the Council of Foreign Relations. In fact, you can't be anybody or anything without the CFR, except if you're, Donald Trump. And so the whole thing is being played out right in front of our eyes. It's no longer secret. It's not conspiracy. You can go to Davos, Switzerland, and listen to the World Economic Forum. You can go to all these other meetings. You can listen online. And your listeners are savvy enough to understand how to find this information. It's not hidden anymore. And so my theory is this. For example, just today, it says that the new pox, the monkeypox, is in all 50 states. And just last week, this is going to be shredding you, but I'll say it anyway. A doctor, PhD, medical doctor, in front of Congress said China now has a virus they're experimenting with in their lab. Remember COVID-19? It came out of the Wuhan lab. Well, they're experimenting with a virus that makes the COVID-19 look like a Sunday school picnic. He said that the doctors said that 1% lethality rate came out of COVID-19. This new virus that China's experimenting with is 60%. That means 6 out of 10 people, once they get it, will die. No problem. And he said that the bubonic plague, if you remember, in the Dark Ages, had only a 25% lethality rate, and it set the world back 250 years. That's why they call it the Dark Ages. So China is now playing with this stuff, and this is not to scare you or to be conspiracy. It's actually out in the open. The doctor's saying, hey, these guys are experimenting. they're doing testing on this new thing. If it gets out of the lab, or if China releases it, it could destroy a quarter of the world with no problem. So these are the kinds of things we're dealing with right now.
Right. They got a bunch of these they got a bunch of these labs in Ukraine too. It's like, why do we even do gain of function? This whole concept of doing attempting to gain function is just ridiculous on its face. You know, we was coming to solutions here. We could outlaw that right away. That seems like
we
something
need
that
to.
might be good.
In fact, Bryan, the fact of the matter is, what China did to the world in the old days could be considered an act of war. We would be at war with China right now for what has happened, for the releasing of this virus. And so if we do not stop them, if we don't stop this laboratory experiments, which most nations of the world, including the U.S., do have these labs, and they're experimenting with things that will definitely affect the rest of the world. Even the scientists today are concerned about the monkeypox that's here among us now, and what other things that are coming out, I don't know, but only time will tell.
Yeah, well, we're in a bit of a pickle here because they've set up what our colleague Brian Berletic has coined a pandemic industrial complex. Like we're used to industrial complexes taking time to come to fruition, like sort of through capitalism, through that journey through invention to capitalism to crony capitalism, where it all turns into this giant complex and then becomes a self-licking ice cream cone of corruption. But with the pandemic, it was like, boom, red carpet. Here's an entirely new industrial complex. It's based around pandemics, and we're going to show you what we can do with this new complex. And we'll pick up right there on the other side of a break here. I'm joined by Colonel David Giammona, and we'll be right back.
This is James O'Neill with a check of today's headlines. A federal jury in Michigan has convicted 2 men of plotting to kidnap Governor Gretchen Whitmer. This is the second trial for the men after the government failed this spring to get convictions. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky is vowing to take back Crimea by any means necessary. An icy polar blast is hitting Australia's east coast, bringing heavy rain, hailstones, and snowfall.
For a complete list of shows and our schedule offered on TNT Radio, simply visit our website at tntradio.live. We serve up the latest live news and current affairs, presented by a host of credible and expert commentators who can separate fact from fiction, truth from propaganda, keeping you in the loop on TNT Radio.
All right. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. I'm joined by Colonel David Giammona here, and we're talking about the deep state a little bit, talking about where this all goes, talking about why it is our government creates big agencies to ostensibly help us make sure that China doesn't outrun us in the fourth industrial revolution with regards to robotics and biotechnology and artificial intelligence, all these things that just don't really seem to fit in with American values or the way America was built by the founders. It seems like they're mutually exclusive to me, Colonel, when you really start extrapolating out what those goals would include for the population.
Well, talking about our founders and our forefathers, they had a vision of America. We came over from persecution from England, started another country, had to go through the Revolutionary War to fight off England and their dominance, and we did that. And so we're the great experiment, over 200 years. But as history shows, all the nations of the world that have started well did not end well. You look at Rome, you look at Greece, you look at the Ottoman Empire, whatever it is. Started with great intentions. The 10 Commandments, they're on the wall of the Supreme Court. I guess if they could figure out how to get it off the wall, they would try to do that. But, those are the foundational stones, and our Constitution is a foundational document that we founded on. And we have drifted like a boat in the ocean. We've lost our moorings. The whole world has lost its moorings, really. And so we're trying to find direction here, and we're sinking fast. So we have a lot of players now. Even Barack Obama had the audacity to say, well, the Constitution is an outdated document. We need to revamp it. I hate to hear what his ideas were on revamping it, but it wasn't going to be good. I can tell you that. So the fact of the matter is, we're drifting, and as you lose your moorings, all this kind of stuff starts to take place. Deep state, advanced intelligence, artificial intelligence, all the things that we're talking about on the show are now taking place in the U.S. and around the world. And if people don't stand up for freedom and their rights, and don't make a stand now, we are going to lose all of that, and we're going to regret in looking back that we did not take a stand against this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why we really need the people, the independents and people center left, center right to understand that, this, or even if somehow I have maintained a progressive this far into my show, you need to understand that if you're blaming this all on a political figure, I guess this goes to both sides. You're blaming this all on a political figure. You got to remember that whatever powers they take, that office maintains that power when the pendulum shifts to the other side. So you really got to be careful what you ask for. There's not a whole lot of pearl clutching and wringing of hands, like, oh, they got my political opponent. Good. The FBI got him. Let's stitch him up. And then, 4 years later, when it's Hillary Clinton, all of a sudden it's like, oh, no, leave her alone. That's fine. It's just like, can we at least get something that resembles some sort of honesty here? Because it's gotten to the point almost, Colonel, where I feel like they're doing these things in our faces on purpose so that the polarization will just widen. You know what I mean? We look at someone's Twitter description and we see that they don't have the same politic as us, and it's like, oh, I don't respect that person. Everything they say is garbage. So it almost, and it also, there's almost like a ritualistic aspect to it too. You know what I mean? You watch those shows about serial killers and psychopaths and secret societies and stuff, and you realize that they do humiliation rituals and things like that. And it almost feels like we're getting some sort of like mass, version of that via the media and the social media sometimes.
Well, this would be another 2-hour discussion if we get started on this. But the fact of the matter is, the reason CRT has been created, Black Lives Matter, and all the other things we talk about on these shows is polarization must take place if you're going to divide and conquer a country. You see, militarily, no country in the world can take on the United States, even now in our weakened state. So what do they do? What do the communists want? They want to defund the police. They want to polarize Americans left and right. They want us to fight each other. And while we're doing that, the rest of the world is, making plots and plans to take us over. And that's not conspiracy theory. That's a communist creed. If you want to take a country over, get them fighting against themselves, get them, pointing fingers, and get them to assassinate each other and blame each other and tear each other apart, so that the communist country can say, hey, we've got the answer. If you guys would just follow our creed, our, thrust into socialism. What they don't understand in America, these liberal universities, professors, socialists, communists, that if communists did take over this country and socialism did take over, they would be the first ones to be executed. Go just look at your history, of Russia, Stalin taking over. He assassinated 40 million of his own people, starved them to death, killed them, annihilated them, because to remain powerful, he had to take out everybody who was educated, everybody who, started the revolution had to go. And so I know that's just a opening salvo of a deep discussion we can have about why things are happening in the United States and the reasons behind them.
Yeah, absolutely. And the tenets that you mentioned there, a lot of people will point to the the footage from, I believe, the late 70s, early 80s of Soviet defector Yuri Bezmenov, where he sort of describes this process. And I remember that for most people, the first time they hear him talk about that, it can be a little bit jarring, a little bit eye-opening, like, oh my gosh, wow. And you end up, I think back then, in its original time frame, it had the effect of like, giving an American viewer the like, oh, I don't like communism, and oh, those are dirty tactics. And I don't think we really realized that within, just a few decades, those techniques that Yuri Bezmenov talked about would be coming at us from within our own government and within our own schools and from these organizations that exist outside of our government that are highly influential also, like, Open Society and CFR, and of course that whole roundup of philanthropists ostensibly, but it's not really the way it works, is it? When you see the what we're told originally were like Soviet tactics, all of a sudden it becomes, oh wait, these are globalist tactics, and they're being unleashed on the population in a wave of technology now too, that we were never really even prepared to understand the power of the feedback loop of social media and 24/7 mass media.
Yeah, whether you love Elon Musk or hate him or don't know about him, he says some things that are absolutely true. He's very concerned about artificial intelligence, for example, being unleashed on our planet and us not knowing the power of it, and other things that we don't understand. People think technology is our savior. Well, it could be a savior, but it also could be your, it could be your dictator as well. It can enslave you if you don't understand the power of technology. Just take it, for example, your cell phone. Everybody loves the cell phone, and I use the cell phone. I like, we have meetings on it. We can call, we can Zoom, we can do whatever we want. But it can be turned against you as well. It can track you. It can tie you, tether you. They can track your banking. They can track your info. They can track your whereabouts and much, much more. So, technology works both ways. And, when people say, look to the science, well, the science is only as good as those people who are interpreting the results of it. And so that was even used against us during COVID. Look to the science. Well, the science wasn't telling us anything, really, unless you interpreted it correctly. So that's where we are in the world right now.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing how the science has just taken over everything. And people think that the science is settled, and, all these smart people before us figured out all this stuff. And then we've got our Elon Musks of our contemporary times figuring out the new stuff. And the rest of us, well, we'll just stand by and wait for someone to tell us what the science is. Even if someone else who is versed in the scientific method comes along and says, wait a minute, that piece of the science doesn't make sense when I apply scientific method to it. Well, then we've got the social media there. We've got the mass media there to say, well, that particular guy talking about scientific method, you don't need to listen to him. We're going to cancel him. His butt's canceled. His butt's shadow banned. He's got a bad Wikipedia page now. And, that's how we're going to deal with this. So this whole, new prophets of the white lab coat thing is a huge, huge problem for us moving forward, I think, because a lot of people seem to be buying into this.
Well, yeah. And then you go to your quote fact checkers, which is really a misnomer. It depends. When you say fact checker, what does that mean? Who? It could be, you could be a fact checker on the liberal progressive side and look at a conservative and say, oh, that's not, I don't like that, so we're gonna put that, we're gonna ban you. Or if you're an anti-vaxxer or a vaxxer, whatever side you're on, just look at the fact. Well, the facts can be manipulated, and the one fact I can tell you, I have been on many meetings in the military where the commanding general asked for facts, and two different people will give him two different answers. And the general will look at them and say, well, one of you is right and one of you is wrong. You can't be both right or both wrong. And that's just in a simple meeting about money and numbers for a particular organization. So you can manipulate numbers and facts any way you want them. And that's what globalists do and communists do all the time. So you got to be careful. It was one hilarious thing that said when Hillary was debating Donald Trump, she says, well, all you have to do is go to my website and look at the facts on my website. You'll know I'm telling you the truth. Well, that's biggest bunch of baloney, because going to your website is not what I'm going to be doing if I really want to know the facts.
That was great. One of my favorite classic lines from that one. It's like, you're literally using the same technique that Alex Jones uses, but worse. I mean, at least he reprints stuff on his site, and sources it elsewhere sometimes. And she's just like, go to my website. I'll tell you what the facts are. You can even hardly get out of the car, lady.
Exactly. Well, that's the kind of the world we're living in. And so we wrote the Military Guide to Disarming Deception to help people. Here's the bottom line. We wrote the book because we want people to navigate for themselves what they think they believe is the truth. So how do you navigate these things? If I'm telling you this is the truth, I would say don't believe me. Don't believe anybody who says I'm telling you the truth. I would say go check it out for yourself. Go look at all the information and then make an intelligent decision based on your research. And research both the good and the bad, the left and the right, and, all the things in between. Because if you're just going to go by, what someone says, in the military, we have a saying, believe only half of what you see and none of what you read. That's probably a good place to start if you're really going to navigate deception in the end times.
Oh, yeah. It's also a great place for us to take a break. We'll be right back with today's News Talk.
The end is near. We're all going to die. Here we go again. So says the mainstream media when it comes to climate change.
From Washington, D.C., this is the Morano Minute with your host, TNT Radio's Mark Morano.
CBS Sunday Morning host Jane Pauley went full climate astrology, warning of end times for humanity unless we legislate ourselves better weather. Here is CBS News' Jane Pauley.
So how bad can it get? According to some scientists, the possibility of worldwide societal collapse or even eventual human extinction isn't out of the question. It's a harsh warning, to say the least.
Actually, correction. It's total bull bleep, to say the least. Sadly, this is what passes for climate journalism in most of the world today. Utter and complete medieval witchcraft pronouncements. For the Morano Minute, this is Mark Morano for TNT Radio.
Hi, I'm Vanessa Lowe, long jump gold medalist and world record holder. When I was 15, I was waiting to catch my train. In a split second, my life changed. As the train arrived, the crowd surged forward. I was too close to the platform edge, lost my balance, and fell into the path of the oncoming train. I was in a coma for 2 weeks, and it took 2 years to walk again. So please, stand back, look up, and stay rail safe.
Mainstream media censors, smears, and intimidates those telling the truth. We mandate that the truth be told. Today's News Talk, TNT Radio.
Thank you for rejoining us, everybody. I'm joined by Colonel David Giammona. We've been talking about the deep state, and now we're to the part where we're talking about how to understand, how to deflect, how to contextualize, how to protect one's worldview such that it is something at least based on somewhere close to reality, and how difficult that is in these times where we are surrounded by fact checkers, where we're told if we have the wrong color hat or the wrong color tie, we might just get canceled, or if we hold the wrong belief, or if we did the wrong activity over the weekend, We may lose the respect of our coworkers. This kind of stuff is ridiculous. This kind of stuff is for nations in decline. We don't want to be a nation in decline, Colonel, do we? We need to get out of this. And let me just read you a couple headlines here to back up what you're saying there. Facebook admits in court that fact checks are just opinions. And you can just type that in, everybody. Type that in. Type in fact checker in court opinion. And you'll get a number of articles that you can do exactly what the Colonel has recommended here. Read them yourself. Don't take our word for it, and decide for yourself when you see these kind of things come out. Like, what are the function of fact checkers if a company that has given billions of dollars to the government or to certain political candidates to make sure that their chosen political party stays in power, when we've got plenty of track record on that, on every single Silicon Valley CEO and CFO, all the C-level people, they're all pretty much of the same political opinion, the same political backing, and they're here trying to silence conversations like this and tell you what facts are in a post-truth world. They've already admitted this is a post-truth world here, and that's where the dangers are, Colonel. But the light ahead can be one can get on the path by checking out your book, definitely, right? I mean, you give people a tool set that they can use to protect themselves from this stuff.
The Military Guide to Disarming Deception is all based on my 32 years of military experience and what I learned and gleaned. Because the military, if you go to Sun Tzu, who's really the Chinese philosopher from thousands of years ago, we still follow him today. And that book he wrote, The Art of War, is still studied in the Army War College. And if you want to follow that, what the first thing Sun Tzu tells us, that all warfare is based on deception. So when you get up in the morning, you have to understand we are at war. And it's just not physical war. There's a cultural war going on. There's spiritual war going on. There's a even the climate wars that are going on, and on and on it goes. So we go through, in the book, we go through each chapter. We look at government, we look at education, we look at science, we look at evolution, we look at all these things. So one of the things I would tell the listeners today is, we all have glasses on that are filtered. What kind of education did you receive growing up? How did you know if there was any bias in that? Was any propaganda? Because we all have that inputted into our lives. And the reason a lot of young people are disillusioned right now is because they've been fed a lie for so many years. They don't know what the truth is anymore. And they really would like to know what the truth is. So in the book, I'm not telling you, oh, this is the truth, and everything we write is the truth. Go and follow my book. You'll be okay. The fact of the matter is, read the book and then decide for yourself. And one of the great stories in the Bible is in the New Testament. The Apostle Paul goes to a place called Berea and starts preaching the gospel to there. And the Bereans come up to the apostle and said, you know what, Paul, we like what you're saying, but we're going to go home and study ourselves and see if what you are saying is the truth. And that's what we need to be about in every area of our life. Let's study for ourselves. Let's look at, quote, the facts. Let's look at what the media is saying. Let's look at what other people are saying. And then let's make some intelligent, informed decisions about what's going on in life, and not just believe everything you hear and see. So I would start right there.
Yeah, absolutely. My previous guest is a professor, and he was talking about how at the college that he teaches at, there's only like 4 other professors there out of over 300 or something like that. Or maybe he was talking about the staff in general, but he said he's come across like just a handful of people that I don't even want to paint him as a political party. You know what I mean? Obviously, he's not a progressive, but he's of the mindset that we as educators should be teaching people to be critical thinkers, and that he wants to hear from the people that disagree with him, but he just wants to be heard too. And, that he has to go to extra effort with his students to present both sides of an argument. And he'll often start a topic by saying, well, like he used the minimum wage as his example. He said, what do you guys think about minimum wage being raised to this many dollars? And they all agree with it. They all say why. And then he'll have to say, okay, well, here's the counter argument to that you're going to come across. Someone is going to replace the waiter with a robot because it's a lot cheaper and they don't have to pay health insurance on it. So that whole thing may go away. So, as you move into the world and some congressperson calls you and says, what do you think of this measure, to raise the thing? How are you going to actually feel about it when you know that the consequence is that jobs are going to be lost? You know what I mean? So like the fact that he's pointing out that there's only a handful of people in my university that are outside of this whole progressive, utopia thing, that I have to go to these great lengths to come up with examples to share with my students to actually make them critically think.
Well, let's be perfectly honest here. I mean, this is what this show is all about. Most universities, I'm talking about secular universities and a lot of even private or Christian universities, they hire people based on their progressive beliefs. They're not going to hire you if you're a conservative in your political views. They will make sure that I've talked to many professors. I have friends who are professors. And if you espouse other than the party line, you're a persona non grata. They will not hire you in that. And they're supposed to be, quote, progressive, liberal thinking. Let's hear both sides. That is not true at all. And as you just said from your friend and your previous guest, fact of the matter is, if you are not toting the party line, and we all know what that is in the United States of America, if you don't agree with their that line, then you are out. So it's no longer about critical thinking and understanding the left and the right and the middle and understanding black and white. It's understanding this one thing: you must toe the line that we're telling you, or you're not going to be a professor at this university. And that's where we are today. A lot of these professors will not say anything against that. They don't want to lose their job. So they will just dive into it, even though they don't agree with it.
That's the worst part to me, when I see people having to suck up that, just ball up that piece of themselves and stuff it down, I can't judge anyone for it. Everyone's situation is different. Someone has to feed their kids. Someone has to pay for their elderly parents' care or something like that. But my goodness, if we could start finding solutions for this. I saw someone post on social media recently that it was an entrepreneur type, and he said, the worst thing you can do for your business is hiring woke mindset people that will destroy your small business faster than anything these days.
Yeah, for example, we talk in a chapter on science in the book, and evolution, for example. Well, most of your liberal universities, most of your just regular universities are teaching evolution. But what people don't understand, and this is just a small portion of what we're talking about, is many microbiologists now, many AI scientists, many thinkers outside of the evolutionary box are saying evolution can't even be possible. It started in a theory by Darwin in the 1800s, and we've known so much more besides that now, but they won't talk about that. They won't give up the party line, no matter how much science, how much biologists and other thinkers say this can't be possible. They're still going to do it no matter what. And so if you're a professor, for example, that believes in other than evolution, you're not going to be hired by any of these, quote, scientific institutions because they think you're a crackpot. If you think about, if you think you are, for example, there's an architecture to the universe, there's design to the universe, there's other things that we need to talk about and which are proven in science, and they won't even talk to you about it because they're scared to death that they will lose that gravity that they have in this institution and evolution. And that's just one aspect of many, many, many things we're talking about here.
Right, because these things make up the whole foundation. We can't have them having to reprint all the books and having to unindoctrinate all these people from these things. I mean, it's just amazing when you really start peeling back the layers as to the lies we've been told over the years. I hear the exit music there, Colonel, so I'll hand it over to you. Anything you want to say before you get out of here? You got about 30 seconds.
Oh, no, thanks for having me on. I think that our discussion here is really important as we go forward so that people can become more critical thinking in the future. Take a look at our book, The Military Guide to Disarming Deception, which we were talking about disaster. And take a look at it, and we'll have more discussions down the road. Thank you.
All right. Excellent. Thank you so much for joining us, Colonel. We'll do it again. I'll look forward to it. All right, everybody. This has been the Bryan McClain Show here on today's News Talk. Stay tuned. We got a lot more coming up for you on the live stream, and I'll see you tomorrow for another one.